Okay, well, we're good. We're good. Okay, I'm sorry. We're good. My apologies. Okay. All right, we're good. Go ahead.
Great.
So
Yeah, just
we need to go to the next slide, right?
your space bar. You get it. There we. So this.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We go.
Oh,
There
there
we
we
go. Yeah. It might take a minute or two.
go. Okay.
So IEC, if you're unfamiliar, since 1975, the Illinois Environmental Council has worked to safeguard Illinois, its people, its plants and animals, and the natural systems on which all life depends by building power for people and the environment. We represent over 150 different organizations, not strictly environmental organizations. There's several other kinds of groups and orgs that are not primarily focused on environmental work, but understand the importance and overlap that environmental issues might have on their business or their organization's priorities. And so the Illinois Environmental Council advances sound environmental laws and policies at all levels of government by bringing together the Illinois environmental community to influence decision makers and ensure clean air, clean water, and healthy communities. We coordinate our affiliate organizations, other members to share resources, mobilize supporters, and respond quickly to issues that might arise. So we build consensus around an annual environmental agenda to lobby city, state, and federal decision makers, which continues to be more important than ever. And we take pride in leading our environmental movement in Illinois.
Oh, I messed up. That was my fault. I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Do you know what to do?
And then click share at the bottom.
Oh, is it already selected?
Click that this blue bar.
No, that's what happens. My screen meeting.
Let me see it.
You have to select it, didn't you?
What happened? Is it still not advancing?
Oh, it was my fault.
You got it set?
Not yet. You better check it out.
You got it. Apologies, please. You had it advanced too far?
No.
No, for whatever
I'll-
reason, it just stopped sharing and then.
I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll get it. Share. All right. I'm sorry about that. I thought we were. Okay. There we go. We got screens. Okay, hang on. Sharing now, but we're having. God damn it. Okay, hang on. What did she? Okay, hang on here. It's gonna take it just a minute here. We'll be all ready.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with.
No, it's all right. We got it. We just gotta
And that's what happened.
participate at your time.
About that green arrow.
No, that's what we're trying to do right now is enable the sharing on this thing. Sharing.
And try to move back.
The screen sharing, it should be sharing
Yeah,
where
but go back
Okay.
to
Maybe go back to the
where you can.
the browser. Yes. Yes, the Internet Explorer. There you go.
okay.
Is that showing?
Oh, it's not showing right now. We're gonna just have to stop it again. We're gonna have to get in here real quick. It's taking a minute. I'm sorry about this, Charlie. We just had another technical glitch. It's there, but we'll get it sharing in a minute. Huh? God damn it. shit.
Back to, let me try sharing it again.
Okay.
Click on application window.
And okay, we got it now. All right, now we'll go back to
Slideshow.
right here. Okay, sorry about all the trouble here, my friend. Well, it's a God damn it. Oh, slideshow. Okay. All right. Okay, we got it.
Move forward.
One slide, right? What we
Yes.
do.
Great. And so we'll start off with why soil, why now? Over the course of the past several decades, we have seen sheet and real erosion rates increasing due to our ongoing practices in agriculture.
Next slide.
No. So, this might be obvious, but 95% of our food comes from soil. And in the Midwest, we lose an estimated 2 tons of topsoil per acre per year due to erosion. And Illinois has already lost half of its native topsoil in many agricultural areas. And several farms and agricultural parcels throughout the state continue with archaic agricultural practices that continue to exacerbate this problem and have created what are essentially dust bowl conditions that have continued to create harm. Most notably, this past summer, there was a massive pileup middle Illinois because a bunch of topsoil was picked up and it caused a massive pileup. I'm not sure if there were any deaths, but there were okay. And there were several people injured, and it was very unfortunate. So that's a real life example of the consequence of these ongoing archaic agricultural policies and practices. And we want to remember that healthy soils provide a myriad of benefits, which include carbon storage and water filtration, food security, as well as climate resilience, which will become increasingly important as we move into the next several decades. You can go ahead and click. And so in this presentation, I'll be going over several of the bills, again, that we highlighted and advocated for on both our Food and Farm Advocacy Day, as well as our Conservation Lobby Day. And so one of the first bills that I'll talk about today is this Illinois Soil Health Week Act, HB 54. And what it does is it dedicates the first full week of March as Soil Health Week. And why does this matter? We want to increase public awareness and public support. Although Illinois has a massive agricultural presence and is important for agriculture in the country, I think there's about why soil health is so important. Illinois has some of the richest and most valuable soil in the world. And it's a shame that due to our agricultural practices, we have degraded the soil to such a degree over time. So we want to make sure that we're reversing that course and educating folks about why preserving our soil health is so important. For instance, our food is less nutritious than ever because our soil health has degraded. Because there aren't as many elements in the soil for seeds and plants to absorb as they grow, they lack a lot of the growth properties that ends up providing the nutritional value to us. So the food that we're growing, in comparison to several decades ago, is less nutritious given the same amount of food that you would consume. So this is very worrying and something that many folks are not aware of, right? So we want to ensure that we're providing structured visibility and community engagement around this issue. We can go to the next slide. So we also want to restore SWCD funding, which is soil, water, and conservation funding. Restore this is trying to 8.8 for these districts, declined over 40% since 2000, and they are they provide technical support for farmers. It's critical for program delivery. These conservation districts provide massive amounts of information as well as support and resources to farmers as well as other agricultural related businesses that will help support this trend towards restoring our soil health and moving towards alternative agricultural practices. Next slide. Another bill includes expanding cover crops. This would increase funding to $6.1 million to cover 1 million acres of land. And this matters because cover crops help reduce nitrogen runoff by over 28%. From farms, whether they're big or small, is a massive issue. This nutrient runoff leads all the way to the Gulf, where it creates a hypoxic zone, which prevents any life from surviving. Illinois shares one of the largest, is one of the biggest responsibility, or Illinois is responsible for a massive share of this nutrient runoff due to its massive agricultural presence. So it's very important to think of solutions to help prevent this nutrient runoff that is ending up in the Gulf and destroying sea life. It also helps prevent erosion by up to 90%, and the program is oversubscribed each year. This is an incredibly important program. IEC has supported the expansion of similar programs over the past several years, and it's a great nature-based solution that helps alleviate this massive issue of nutrient runoff. Next slide.
Having a little trouble advancing here.
Yeah, I think there's just a delay. Next was our Natural Resources and Agricultural Legacy Act. This creates conservation easement programs and match funds for federal dollars and simplifies that. And this matters because 2 acres of Illinois farmland is lost every 5 minutes. And it brings Illinois in line with 28 other states that are leveraging federal funding. Farms are incredibly important. We want to feed folks in Illinois. However, one of the biggest issues is the fact that a majority of the food that's grown in Illinois is exported. So over 90% of the food that is consumed by people in the state of Illinois has been imported from other states, right? And so we want to ensure that we're helping to create an ecosystem of businesses and farmers that helps facilitate more locally sourced food so that trucks aren't having to drive and create emissions by delivering different goods, and ensuring that farmers have the support to grow locally and enrich their own communities.
Next one.
Yes. The next is compost market development. This provides grants for compost use on public and private agricultural land.
It's coming.
And it would also create a partnership with the University of Illinois for further soil research. And this matters because 1 ton of compost stores over 250 pounds of carbon and reduces landfill waste by up to 50%. So it's a really great, nature-based solution to ensure that we're tackling 2 issues, right? Carbon capture and reducing landfill waste.
Okay, next one.
Yes.
Okay. All set.
Strengthening pesticide and herbicide regulations. This map that's on this slide shows that tens of millions of pounds of pesticides are applied each year in Illinois. So this bill would enhance oversight and accountability for chemical applications. This matters because pesticide drift continues to be a massive problem due to, again, our current agricultural practices. There's over 1,200 pesticide drift complaints filed in 2023 alone, and drift threatens pollinators and native vegetation. It's incredibly sad to see the negligent and overuse of these pesticides and herbicides that ends up drifting into other nature preserve areas, forest preserve areas, or even folks' homes, right? Where maybe they're trying to grow some food for themselves and ends up killing what little food that they're trying to grow in their own homes, right? Absolutely. It's a wildlife issue as well. Again, this negligent use of pesticides and herbicides has an overarching impact on not only human health, but the health of ecosystems and the biosphere at large.
What did they go
One
for?
before.
Right there. That one. Shit, come on. That one.
Further. This is the beginning. We'll be protecting our wetlands.
As soon as it comes.
Not
It's our internet connection. It's just a little, I'll have this corrected soon, but it's coming. Expanding cover product. Right there.
one more. There we go. So this is another really big act that many of our partners and affiliates have been extremely engaged on over the past couple of years. This is protecting our wetlands. A couple of years ago, there was a Supreme Court case that related to the Clean Water Act. And so the Supreme Court made a decision that weakened the language in relation to wetlands and what defined a wetland. And so because they changed the definition, wetlands across the United States lost federal protection. Several of them did. Many of them, which are in the state of Illinois. And so what this bill does is aims to reinstate wetlands. The court case is Sackett v. EPA. This is incredibly important because we want to ensure that wetlands not only fill that gap that was left by the federal administration, but also includes a buffer where wetlands continue to have increased protections within the state of Illinois. And wetlands are another really important ecosystem within the state. They provide several benefits, including flood mitigation, especially in areas that have been hit with torrential rain, and is continuing to be a pattern that we'll continue to see torrential rain and drought patterns over the next several years. There are also incredibly great habitats for birds. According to the State of Birds report, bird populations in all kinds of habitats in the United States declined over the past decade, except for those birds that inhabited wetlands. So again, it demonstrates the importance not only for, again, flood mitigation, which is very important for folks that live in these very wet regions. It's incredibly important for the expansion and growth and preservation of several species that call these wetlands home. And great partners of ours, including the Wetlands Initiative, are doing some really amazing work to convert parcels of flooded land on farms into smart wetlands, where it's another type of nature-based solution to prevent that nutrient runoff from reaching the goal. So the Wetlands Initiative will go in, assess a parcel of land, work with the farmer, and they will convert what was normally a very flooded area into a wetland, and through the biological and chemical processes of that wetland, it'll help absorb that nutrient runoff and convert it into all the necessary nutrients and things that are needed for a wetland to continue to thrive. So it's really great, and a lot of farmers, immediately see the value of smart wetlands due to the decreased of the rest of their farm, in the case, and abundance of nature and wildlife that they then see on their farm. So it's really great to see that reflected across these different regions.
Okay, next one.
And action and wetlands again help reduce flood risk by over 60%, which is one of the many benefits that we like to highlight when we talk to legislators or the general public who might not even be aware of what a wetland is or understand why it's such an incredibly important type of habitat. Slide.
So as it comes up. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Next is this right to recreate bill. This originated, I believe, in Will County due to some folks who were recreating. They were floating down the river, which river in Will County, but because it passed through the backyards of some folks' homes, it raised a really big issue because those homeowners came out and said, you cannot be on this waterway because it's part of our property, right? And so this bill helps clarify public rights to responsibly access Illinois rivers and streams. And this matters because outdoor recreation contributes to $16.6 billion a year to the Illinois economy. And public access is an equity and is not only an equity concern, but it's an economic growth concern, right? Illinois rivers should be publicly accessible. They should be able to be enjoyed. And when you have public access to Illinois rivers and streams, it helps connect people to the ecosystem and the natural world, and helps improve their understanding of why these resources are so important, why they need to be protected through other actions. Slide. This is another really cool bill, Indigenous Peoples Conservation Rights. This essentially simplifies and allows landowners to form conservation easements with tribal nations. And this matters because indigenous managed lands show higher biodiversity and lower degradation, and it recognizes this ancestral and historic land stewardship. This is something that we want to continue to grow and develop, understand the impact and history of indigenous people across not they play a significant role in conservation and the protection of our natural world. Prescribed Burn Awareness Month, which is a great way to dovetail the previous slide. This would declare April as Prescribed Burn Month, and this matters to prescribed burns, reduce invasive species, and restore prairie ecosystems in the state of Illinois specifically, and helps reintroduce fire as a natural process. Indigenous people in the United States, Illinois, frequently, whatever reason, conservationists in the 18th centuries formed a different opinion that fire was not good at all for the natural world. They should do all that they can to prevent fires in prairies or other forested areas. So this has led to even now a poor public understanding of how important prescribed burns are in improving and facilitating the health of different ecosystems, specifically prairies within the state. There are many people who, they might see a prescribed burn and not understand what is going on, why is this happening. So again, this helps improve the education to the general public about the value of this particular tool. It helps remove some of the stigma that has been attached to prescribed burns due to several decades, a century of a particular style of conservation. And this work is part of a bigger movement. Policy, which is what we work on, is one piece, but so are protests and rallies, letter writing, phone banking, youth organizing, local economic justice initiatives, indigenous leadership, regenerative agriculture. Together, this list isn't exhaustive. There are several other facets and qualities that make up this larger environmental movement that together form a resilient movement that engages several folks, that engages several different communities and groups to ensure that we're advancing towards a form of conservation and agriculture that is responsive to communities and is in line with their priorities.
No, split her order with me. Then I went up on the soup. Sorry.
So, ways to take action include meeting your legislator and sharing your story. As I mentioned before, IEC, along with other really great organizations such as Open Lands and the Nature Conservancy, we help coordinate these really great lobby days, again, where we bring constituents down to Springfield, where they get to engage with their legislator and connect very intimately about the issue at hand, how it relates to themselves, and how they can continue to amplify that to their legislator. On Wednesday, I led a group, and we had several really great interactions with legislators and their teams. One of them being the legislator, their district several weeks from now, which is a great follow-up that we would like to see. Ventura, Senator Ventura. No. I can clarify in a second. As well as like volunteering with your local soil and water conservation district, supporting composting and native plantings, and joining IEC's advocacy days and campaigns. We disseminate lots of information. Again, our bread and butter is policy oriented. So every week we provide updates on these pieces of legislation, whether they've passed the House, whether they've been introduced in the first place, whether they've been sent back to a particular committee, whether they passed the Senate, and so forth. But it's not just limited to these conservation and ag bills, right? Those are just the bills that I'm more connected and working on specifically. But we have other staff members at IEC that work on other issue areas, including energy, including transportation, zero waste, clean water specifically. Although there's a lot of connectivity between our work. For instance, this wetlands bill is dovetailed quite nicely with our clean water initiatives because wetlands act as a nature-based solution to help filter and clean waterways.
Okay, next one.
Yep.
As soon as it goes through.
And so this is one of our upcoming opportunities to engage. IEC, for the first time, will be hosting a Chicago Lobby Week. And so we're looking for folks to join us at City Hall. at 9 a.m. on April 16th. It'll be a large rally. And this includes several different ordinances in the city of Chicago that we'll be looking to advocate and amplify, including this Hazel Johnson cumulative impacts ordinance. This ordinance would require the city to understand the total burden of pollution and its impact. There's this water for all ordinance, which would help alleviate water debt and water related issues within the city of Chicago. There's a tree equity and forestry investment. Chicago has one of the lowest urban canopies with a climate, public health, and a racial justice issue as well. Tree coverage is incredibly important, especially as we move several years from the future, where we'll continue to have bouts of extreme heat. And because lots of areas of Chicago lack tree coverage and are understandably a bunch of concrete and brick, those areas absorb that sunlight and will become even hotter. Those surfaces will become even hotter if there isn't tree coverage that helps absorb and alleviate some of that surface heat. And then reducing single-use plastics and restoring environmental enforcement. 22 million pounds of plastic enter the Great Lakes each year, over half in Lake Michigan. We continue to see really great research done by the University of Illinois system, where they study, wildlife, sea life in the Great Lakes, and the numbers are astounding in relation to fish that they observe that have several grams of plastics in their bodies, right?
What is it?
It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. A big thing, again, all types of plastics use will leach, again, little pieces of plastic, microplastics, right? That end up falling into our waterways, leading into the Great Lakes. It's a massive issue. It's
Mostly micro.
All right, well, let it, let's go to questions. Let him finish up and then we'll go to questions.
So again, this next slide. Thank you for your support, and it's really great to engage with folks in settings like this, and really talk about our work, and again, how you can be involved or how you can continue to be educated and informed about all these different issues. Thank you.
Okay, now go on.
Nice.
Well, yeah, but we still got some minor issues.
He's
All right.
First page.
No, I'll show you after the presentation. Okay. All right. Who's got a question? All right. Hang
I
on.
don't know if I should be the first one to.
Go right ahead.
Now, your agency is a state agency.
We're a nonprofit.
Are you?
No. What makes us unique or different than a lot of nonprofits, we have both a 501c3 as well as a 501c4.
Okay.
And so that C4 allows us to engage in behavior that lobbying behavior, right?
Okay.
But a lot of our work is the C3 public education, right?
Here's my real question.
Yeah.
Is I think most of us are taking note. We have a new president now. Who
Yeah.
takes a different approach to things. How he hasn't seen. I don't know how much he's impacted the environmental community yet. But what do you think he's going to do? What do you think the solution is? How is that going to affect your organization or other environmental organizations and our environment as a whole?
Absolutely.
Oh, he loves coal. That's one thing.
One of the immediate things that I think most folks have been seeing in the news is kind of the slashing of the EPA. IEC has had really great relationship with staff in the Illinois EPA, right? Understandably, they're working on a lot of things that align with the bills and policy focuses and initiatives that IEC is involved with. So it's unfortunate to see scientists, researchers who are doing some really incredible work, being forced to abandon their jobs, or they're being forced to quit essentially. And uh, and not only that, are direct to the federal government, or the EPA now,
What's an example of that?
like climate change. Yeah.
What about, is your organization funded? Are there any federal funds there, or is it mostly private, or?
Majority of our funding are from private grants from private institutions. But we continue to work with our development team to ensure we increase the diversity of our funding. So we also do lots of fundraising to get.
But is there any federal funding to speak of?
No. So we weren't directly impacted by any federal actions, but we do work with several organizations such as Open Lands, for instance, who did receive a federal grant from the Biden administration for restorative work at Medewan National Tallgrass Prairie.
Okay.
And that funding was frozen. So there were restoration crews at Medewan National Tallgrass Prairie, and when that funding freeze occurred, they just picked up everything and they left. Because there was no certainty that they were going to get reimbursed for their work, right? So that's a real world example and a very tangible impact of the federal administration decisions, impact on restorative work being done within the state of Illinois specifically.
Your job is not in danger.
All right.
No. Unfortunately.
Okay. Our next presenter is Charlie. I gotta. All right. Well, go ahead. Here, too. All right. George, go ahead. Mike
is been very corrupt and is very even more corrupt in this country. There's 500. I'm going to start a new organization called Prior to 500. That means the people that make all the decisions, like the people that. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, there's 500 people in Washington, D.C., including my sleazy types. And they all get kickbacks from big plastic, from big oil, from big pollution, from all the bads. That's the big pesticide, big herbicide.
So what's your question, Mike?
I realize that that's where the decisions are made, the 500 in DC. It's nice that you're doing this local stuff. It's cute, nice, Illinois, but that's where the real corruption and problems are. Isn't in DC. Okay.
We're doing a lot of, the Illinois Environmental Council is, very Illinois focused, obviously. Our biggest focus is passing full bills within the state legislature, right? Obviously, we don't underestimate the impact of the federal government in regard to funding mechanisms that help, again, restoration or infrastructure needs or whatever it may be. And IEC has continued to grow over the past several years. And so one thing that we've been trying to improve is our federal presence as well. So we've recently started a weekly federal call where we try to understand the actions of the federal administration and how they would impact the state of Illinois.
Right.
Yes, because one of the big things is the administration is signing a bunch of memorandas and direct actions, but a lot of them are being blocked by different courts across the country, right? And the fact that they're just signing a bunch of things and saying that they're doing these things and causing a lot of chaos and misunderstanding is a strategy in itself that they're employing. They want us to not be they want us to panic. They want us to think, oh wow, that he's doing this thing. Is it going to happen tomorrow? What is going to be the actual impact? And so now we're wasting our time trying to figure out how we're going to respond to it, but it might be blocked by a specific court, so it's not something that we have to worry about immediately, right?
Okay, we're gonna get George and then Charlie.
Front shoreline still receding, is it as bad as it used to be?
Yes, there has continued to be erosion. The city of Chicago has been working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to create different types of reports and research methods to figure out not only nature-based solutions, such as, for example, maybe in different parts of the country, like expansion of mangroves might be a nature-based solution to respond to erosion. But they're also thinking of, what is great infrastructure, right? Maybe there's, particular breaks or other structures that are necessary to help prevent the worst effects of erosion, because in a lot of the south side of Chicago, they see massive amounts of flooding, so bad that 2 summers ago, FEMA had to provide assistance because the south and west sides of Chicago had been hit with such bad torrential rains, exacerbated by the continued decades of erosion.
Okay, Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, Sergio, a farm is a
Hang on,
small.
Charlie. You gotta get the hang on.
What?
All right, Charlie, I got you. Go ahead and restate your stuff.
Oh, is he
Go
there?
ahead, Charlie.
Where's the speaker?
Yeah, we can hear it. Just there's some. He's there. All right, Charlie, go ahead. Ask your question. Hang on.
Yeah, a farm is a.
Hey, come on. He's got a question
What's
for you.
going
Come on,
on?
line. He got distracted, Charlie. We're going now. Okay, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah,
ahead.
Sergio, a farm is a small private business. And I don't understand why we're giving millions of dollars to these small businesses, a particular type of small business. We don't do that in Illinois. Dapper's restaurant doesn't get any money from the state of Illinois. Why don't they run their own operations?
Okay, maybe get back to it.
I'm not quite sure the connection you're trying to outline,
We're
but
spending money on a private
you
business.
see,
Using
Charlie,
state of
we're having
Illinois
trouble
money.
with all right, Charlie, we are having trouble with speaker volume, so just let him finish and I'll get back to you.
yeah, it's incredibly important to create a harmonious relationship between the organizations that we're engaged with, as well as the business community, and hearing what their concerns are, right? In regard to agriculture, for instance, we want to move away from the current models of monopolized farm industry, and so we want to support local producers, local farmers, and some of the best ways to do that is advocate in Springfield for different programs that either lift particular types of red tape that impact their ability to create and deliver their produce or whatever goods. So I think that's an example of support businesses in the hopes that we're moving away from kind of the detrimental model that we've currently been placed on. But I'm not sure I quite understand the question. But if that is a response that kind of helps alleviate or demystify kind of the relationship between our environmental focused work and how it relates to supporting a particular type of local or small business.
I'm gonna get, okay, Jan, you're next, go ahead. No, Jan, you're next, go ahead. Loud, please, Jan. Loud, real loud.
Like, HR this and SB that,
Mhm.
or HR this and HR and SR that, or H do something and S do something.
Mhm.
And, I don't know whether, maybe it's just me. I've only recently learned why these bills have two names. And what happens if, if you, for example, keep the, okay, the 1401 is what? Is that Senate resolution?
I would have to brush.
I put in an essay in support of 1401. And, but it also has a house number.
Yeah, there's the Wildlife Protection Act is Senate Bill 2401. That's
Yeah.
okay. The House number is 3596.
So if I send in a support for SB 2401, and that and say it passes the Senate, well then the House has got this other bill that they're going to pass.
It's the same bill. It's just they just do that denotion because it's in the Senate versus the House. Yeah.
And what number is it going to have?
It would be denoted as both. So again, as I put up, it would be both like HB 3596 / SB 2401, and that's what would come to the governor's desk. Yeah.
It's a beast.
So now
House bill or Senate bill.
a bill.
Mm-hmm. Well, the resolution is for like recognition of the ones that we outlined were like prescribed burn month, which is in a it's a resolution to like recognize something. It's not necessarily like
Rescue be in favor of prescribed dog guards, but not a law.
I can too.
it's a you're right. It's not a law. It would be for that resolution specifically. It would just be recognition of prescribed burn month, right? This yeah. Again, it's just support for improving public understanding and then getting alignment with the state.
The whole habitat restoration project there, plus a lot of other grasses that are growing down in the park below my windows. And I was very happy to see that.
Some people might see it and think, what's going on? We're doing this, right? And that's why it's incredibly important to maybe just speak with the folks that are doing those prescribed burns to get a better understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get you next.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry, George. Yeah, we'll get George next, then go ahead, George.
who's going, okay?
Yeah, you.
Do you deal with wildlife? Okay,
Yeah.
last week there was a wolf, species, born, and it was, extinct for 13,000 years. Scientists, developed, the archaic DNA from 13,000 years ago, and this wolf was born. What do you think about that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, not sure as creative position on this really emerging technology, but I think there's a good argument to say that it's not really conservation. And it's not, yes, the dire wolf. It's not even an actual dire wolf. They've isolated particular types of genes from pieces of the that animal, and they just combined it with another type of modern wolf. So it's not actual. It's got the aesthetic or the phenotype of a dire wolf, but it doesn't necessarily have the same genotype as a dire wolf from 10,000 years ago would have. So it's kind of not a misconception. Well, yeah, kind of a misconception that they're passing it off as this is 100%, 100% replica or copy of this dire wolf 10,000 years ago. It's something different.
But if they keep messing with DNA, they can get another COVID virus.
Perhaps I'm not too well informed about what's the work that they're doing, but
Okay, all right, no, Bill, we're getting this guy next. Wait, he's next. Russ is next.
Yeah, I've heard that rule of the waters, I forget the actual title, and being pushed by the Biden, and I guess now it's out with the Trump administration. And then I also heard about the called by Cambria drift. These were stories I heard on RFD, the agricultural channel.
and so what is the question?
What's the question?
Whether they're trying to take over what they are calling wetlands is just where it's a little rainy. I mean, we farm right in the Mississippi, where it floods over, and after the flood, that helps the soil.
Yeah, I think what the point you're kind of describing is there is a lot of contention between different groups in regard to how wetlands should be defined, right? There's always kind of like the joke from people who I guess are anti-defining wetlands a particular way, where they're just like, oh, if there's a puddle, it's a wetland, huh? That's like the joke. But I think this bill has pretty specific and clarified language as to like what a wetland is in terms of a contiguous a contiguous parcel of water, or if it's not contiguous, what are the different metrics and variables that would help us understand what a wetland is in many different conditions, right? Because wetlands aren't always wet, right? They go through periods of drought, right? But that doesn't erase what they're defined to be as.
All right, we're gonna go now to. All right, no, we got online next, then we're gonna get a couple of. Bill, shut up. Jake, you're up. You go next, Jake. Jake, you got your hand up? Go ahead. I muted you. Go ahead, Jake.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your talk. I got a question about the transit system. There is a bill before Springfield, I think this has come up before, to merge the three or four separate transit agencies into one in order to make it more efficient. Has the Illinois Environmental Council taken any position on this?
Would not be.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah. I'm
Hello?
not sure whether we've been updated with a particular position on that, but I'll share my contact information. So if anybody has like follow-up questions, not able to answer them, they can connect you with other folks on our staff who might have a better understanding, especially as it relates to pieces of legislation. We have a really great legislative director, Danny Robles, who maintains our connections. Danny Robles, he maintains our connections with legislators and is deeply informed about different pieces of legislation and their status. Again, whether it's passed the House or or it's been referred back to the committee or whatever it may be.
Okay, Charlie, you're next for your next question, and now while I get the. All right, Charlie, go ahead.
Sergio, you said you wanted to have more nutritious food. But if you do that, you have significantly less food. I'm a little bit concerned if we implemented all your programs that the price of food would be increased significantly and the supply would go down significantly. We're paying a lot of money for groceries as it is.
Okay.
Have you ever looked at that cost factor of food?
Sorry about that.
We focus on a couple different really important issues. And I think, for instance, food prices and the cost of goods is impacted by, several factors, but, recently, or maybe not as recently, maybe it's several months ago at this point, the FTC released a report on price gouging from large scale producers in the context of rising food prices during COVID as well as post-COVID. And essentially what they described was a pattern of these large-scale producers who, were hit by real supply chain issues, but because of their size and presence over the industry, they were able to invest heavily in different strategies and mechanisms to help alleviate those supply chain issues, whereas small scale producers weren't able to respond as effectively. But although these large scale producers were able to respond, they decided, or they have continued to increase their prices because they are utilizing the fact that media continues to talk about inflation in a way that they can get away with continuously increasing prices of goods, even though they could be decreasing their prices. But as we probably know, these large scale producers, these large companies, if they're increasing the price of something and they can get away with it, there's no real incentive for them to ever decrease the price of goods if they can always point to this mystery reason why the price of goods should be so high, including inflation, which is also a very hard to understand, I guess, thing for the general public.
Tim,
But you also talk about the supply of food. Not me, but we create more than enough food for people. But one of the biggest issues is the fact that we allow massive amounts of food waste, whether that is because we're going through processes of importation or exportation. And so connecting, again, more effectively with local producers to ensure there's a better relationship between local producers being able to provide these goods and services to their communities will inevitably help reduce food waste, as well as improve not only the number of calories that these communities can consume, but the percentage of micronutrients, which are incredibly important, that these communities might not be particularly getting.
Okay, Mike, stand up if you don't mind, and we can see you a little better.
what is the state of the state? Believe me, this is a huge environmental problem. Not only here, but surprisingly to me, in Europe. Okay, which is very environmentally conscious. A little bit overboard, but some of their stuff makes sense. You know, so let's get to the subject of single-use plastics. That's most of your 22 billion trillion pounds of plastics in Lake Michigan, whatever they grab.
Yeah, in the Great Lakes, yes.
Okay.
So, what has been done? What is going to be done? What can be done? Because when I go into a Jules, I'm disgusted when I see rows upon rows upon rows of single-use plastics. It's one of the biggest concerns for the environment, and it's always drink bottles.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, sometimes it's straws, utensils. But most of the time, you know, besides oil burning, is a huge problem. The biggest environmental problem in this country and in Europe, which always right, is single-use plastics.
Okay.
They're forever chemicals. They're forever garbage. They're in your liver. They're in your heart. They're in his brain. They get into everything.
Oh, we got your question. Let him rebut.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about this issue because I think it's so comparable to previous generations' massive issues, right? Even though we still haven't even solved those particular one that I immediately think of is lead, right? Lead contamination, lead in people's bodies was so
Plastic industry
was so common, and even now, Chicago still has you know, the need to replace several miles of lead pipeline.
Just run the faucet for a minute.
Okay.
It's the same of single-use plastics.
It's a massive issue that requires several different approaches, right? We work with several different organizations that primarily are concerned about plastics and plastics use. So we've supported different bills to help ban particular types of plastics, but also keep in mind particular types of equity issues, right? Maybe there's, you know, folks with conditions or disabilities where, you know, they can't pick up a glass cup or whatever it may be. So, you know, carving out, carving out, exemptions for folks like that, and ensuring that we're having a better nuanced understanding of this issue and, you know, the benefits and consequences of the actions that we take. But yeah, it is a massive issue. Another thing that we're working on within the city of Chicago is like a mandated filter for washers and dryers, because so much of our clothing today are plastics, right? They're synthetic blends, right? And those synthetic blends through your washer and dryer end up into the water system, which again is one of the many ways that microplastics get into our waterways. Another being, you know, synthetic tires. Every time you brake, if you are using synthetic tires, a little bit of microplastics is, you know, eroded from your tires, and that is left on the street, and then it rains, and then that leads into the waterway. So there's several
really good quality.
Okay, Mike, enough said. We got to move on. Mike, we got to move on. All right, we got more questioners. I'm sorry. We're going to get George, and then we're going to get Andrew up here who hasn't had a question yet.
What is,
All right.
wait a second, we can get this. Yeah, but you talked for 10 minutes. A lecturer once said that Chicago was a swampland. Long time ago, it was a swampland, and he said you could still see it in Hyde Park in the morning. And what do you know anything about that?
Yeah. And again, I think that obviously is one of the reasons why erosion is such a massive problem, and something that people, I guess, don't maybe realize why it's an issue, and it's because originally this area was very swamp, right? Very swampy. So there are these conditions because of our essentially our the way that we've designed our urban city. It leads to these consequences where there are areas that are flooded because we remove so much of the necessary vegetation and ecosystems that would normally be the source of absorbing a lot of this excess water. And now we're having to rely on, improvements to this larger stormwater management infrastructure to make up for that. And so that's why I think it's incredibly important to support really great programs like Space to Grow within the city of Chicago, which transforms concrete schoolyards into green spaces where not only is it better for the kids to engage with nature in their own schoolyard, but they also act as flood mitigation for in a way very locally. So it's a really great program, but again, it's a result that we're having to do these types of responses because of the way we've essentially terraformed.
Andrew, we're gonna get you next. Hang on while I get your audio up here. So all right, Andrew, go ahead.
Hey, I missed just the beginning, so I don't think you covered this, but let me know if you did. I'm interested in the process of lobbying. It looks like this organization has had some success. So is there like a one of these bills that you can talk about, like the steps that it took from like the ideas to the formulating and drafting and research and all this stuff? There's kind of two things I'm interested in, but touch on what you think is important. One is like how you deal with corporate opposition, and the other one is this dilemma I've noticed. Activists will approach legislators with these ideas, but they don't really have a lot of work prepared as far as the research, or they haven't prepared legislation. But on the other hand, if you spend all your time and your money trying to formulate these things before you build up a relationship with a legislator, then you may end up wasting your time. So, I just think people have an incomplete understanding of this process, perhaps, and I'd like to know more.
Understandably, a lot of our biggest bills, or the bills that I mentioned today, for instance, this wetlands protection bill, has been in the works for a couple of years now. And some of the biggest steps include connecting with our large coalition and forming a stronger coalition and being able to disseminate information effectively and readily, as well as ensuring that whenever we're hit with questions or whatever it may be, we can respond to specifics and ensure that folks are confident about the direction that we're going in regard to a particular bill. But one thing that IEC excels at is growing, forming, and effectively mobilizing and utilizing these types of coalitions, right? They might start off as working groups, and then we reach out and figure out different strategy. And again, IEC is a really key leader in this larger environmental movement within the state. One of the tools that we utilize within our organization is the power analysis, where we take every single legislator within the state, and we have several different variables that are associated with those legislators, right? What they're involved in, what has their voting record been, and the grade that we've given them in the past. Again, how much money that they've received from other special interests. Other tools that we like to employ, including data on, specifically for conservation, might be acres of protected lands that are within their district, so we can use that as a leveraging point. So I think it's combination of having a good understanding of a particular legislator and their district, forming relationships with legislators and their staff, as well as, which is I think the most key, forming very powerful coalitions that are connected to different communities throughout the state, that are engaged and ready to be mobilized at a moment's notice, whether that is filing witness slips, whether that is sharing and amplifying resources in our effective information campaigns.
All right. 2 questions. You're next, and then we're going to get Jake, and then we're going to be done with questions. We'll go straight to rebuttals. All right, Jan, go ahead.
And they were plowing. The plow they were using when that happened was a new thing. It pulverized the soil and created all that dust, and some people were killed. And I'm just wondering if there's any result from that legally, or if IEC has taken a stand against that kind of plow. I think that it's against the law to use it because of that accident. I don't know. And then I've also want to ask about well, anyway, I just thought Andrew's question was, he did a wonderful job of answering that. Oh, and I don't know if Andrew understands what a witness slip is, but the witness slip rules are different from the House and the Senate. And I wonder if you talk to us about that new plow that caused that accident. And the second is if you could talk to us about how to do witness slips.
I'm not sure whether there's any legislation or anything that's specific to I don't know, maybe regulating the type or make or model of the plows. I'm sure it is, but yeah, I guess unfortunately that hasn't been our focus. It's been these other bills that have been more connected to these I guess other exacerbators of the issue. But that's very interesting that you raised that. I didn't know that this particular type of plow was responsible for kicking up the topsoil. But I think that the topsoil, regardless, is going to continue to be an issue. I think regardless of what type of plow is used, because it's just going to keep building up and very easily blown away. And it only takes one bad windstorm to kind of recreate this similar conditions that'll result in a similar crash.
All right,
and then just quickly, witness slips. Every week again, IEC release like our legislative updates, and sometimes we have calls to action, which include filling out these witness slips, and they can be filled out fairly easily on ilga.gov, which is just the Illinois like Congress website, and we usually provide instructions as to how to fill the witness slips, as writing like whether you're representing yourself or an organization, the information that you have to provide, as opposed to information that's optional for you to input. And so it depends on each particular bill, because sometimes we want folks to file witness slips as proponents of the bill or as opponents of the bill, but we usually provide that context and specific information when it comes to the specific type of bill.
All right, we're going to do Jake as the last questioner. Charlie, you've been up twice already. We're going to just let Jake, it'll be our last question.
Everybody else had 3 questions.
Can't hear me.
Well, I know that. All right, Charlie, we'll let you go with 3 questions then, God.
Well, the
All
other
right,
guy
Jake,
said,
you're next.
why should I get cheated?
Jake, you're next. Jake, you put your hand up. You're next. Okay, Charlie, it's our last question. Then I'm gonna. All right, Charlie, go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Jake,
can you hear
we
me?
can hear you.
Okay, my question is, you were talking about plastics. One of the best ways to stop the problem of solid waste disposal is with recycling. What are you doing to promote recycling in Illinois?
Okay. You'll get the last question, Charlie, but you're cutting into a rebuttal time.
Can you answer the question? Can you answer my question?
Yeah, he's gonna answer it
Hello?
now.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Go
me?
ahead, Jake.
I
We
can you hear me
you, but
now?
let him answer your question.
Okay.
Okay, great. Obviously, again, one of our issue areas is, zero waste, right? So we've been engaged in the pieces of legislation that help resolve, again, plastics, whether they're, again, feeding into our waterways through various types of ways. One, again, highlighting our City of Chicago ordinance that we've supported for that filter for washers and dryers, to respond to, again, the increased prevalence of synthetic fibers from clothing, as well as like plastic bag use at grocery stores. I'm forgetting one more thing. This zero waste isn't in particular my issue area. So I'm trying to remember the pieces of legislation that we've been engaged with. But again, I can provide my information, and I would love to just be able to reply.
You didn't really answer my question.
We're going to
You didn't really
Charlie.
answer my you didn't really answer my
That's
question.
enough, Jake.
My
We're gonna
question.
mute you and move on. Charlie, go ahead.
Yes,
Hang on. Let me get the mic. Just a minute, Charlie.
what's going on?
There's some problems with the speaker volume. Go ahead, Nancy, ask your question.
Yes, farming right now using the standard agricultural practices, the current state of the art best practices, on average has producing, at least for the past 10 years, 2 more bushels of corn per acre, increasing. And that's ultimately, the bottom line in farming is to increase the amount of food that you produce. Can you, if we adopt all your measures, guarantee that this output would be at the same level, or will it be less or more? I believe with my...
Let him answer your question, Charlie.
Will you let me, without being interrupted?
Charlie, he's got to...
Yeah, I guess I can't make any guarantees, especially because one of the biggest obstacles, especially in this policymaking process, is sometimes we introduce bills, and they would be great as they've been introduced, but due to a bill jumping from committee to committee, and compromises having to be made, whether those compromises are positive or negative, could impact how those bills are interpreted. And secondly, the implementation of a bill, again, is just as important as how it's introduced. So again, there have been several cases where a particular bill that is well intentioned might not have the best implementation because the policy around it, or the language within the bill wasn't specific enough or didn't account for unrecognized variables. So it continues to be a concern, and that's the reason why we want to work so much with our partners and affiliates who are engaged with different aspects of a particular industry or issue area. So would incentivize state agencies to procure food from local sources. But there have been some snags in that bill because there has been some language that has been compromised or removed. So the bill that was introduced through with the Illinois Food Justice Alliance Coalition might not be exactly as how they, expected it to be presented and perhaps implemented if it does pass. So that's like the important process of policymaking. So again, I guess we can't make guarantees because there are so many issues or obstacles that might arise due to this larger scale issue. But we work tirelessly again to work with our coalitions and advocacy and lobbying efforts over legislative to try to ensure that the bills that we're supporting as they're introduced are the bills that are going to be inevitably signed by the governor and hopefully implemented in an effective way as well.
All right, we're now going to rebuttals. We're gonna go, Bill, first. We're gonna give you guys about 4 minutes each. You sit down and enjoy yourself a little bit. All right. Go ahead. We're rebuttals. We're gonna give you about 4 minutes each.
Okay. Strap it down. Hold on, folks. I got something to say. Okay, first of all, who remembers the website that follows all the corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C.? Who they get kickbacks from? Do you remember that website?
No.
Ernie, you remember that website? The one that follows the money? Like
OpenSecrets.org.
you're kind of smart. You went to UIC. Went to UIC. Okay, how come you guys didn't know that? OpenSecrets.org. So, in honor of an answer, I'll be wearing this shirt until we get rid of the 500 crooks in Washington, D.C. next November, points from now.
Where did you get that shirt?
Sure. It's an interesting story. Where a very wise person. Jim, where are you?
You now first up.
A fellow named Steve. You remember him?
College, yeah. He handed them out of college.
One
Jail time.
day. Anyway, I'm wearing this until we get rid of all 500 crooks in Washington, D.C. that get kickbacks. I don't care if they're crooked Republicans, crooked Democrats, Trump's gonna go, and all the other crooks. But the main thing is the 535. But there are a few honest people in Washington, D.C. Not many. Like my senator, Dick Durbin, not Turbin. That's the Republican. It's called Turbin. Who's been very quiet in support. Very. You guys ever have any contact with him? No. He's just sitting back, collecting his checks, collecting his kickbacks, going heavily into retirement. But I do see him standing by. You ever heard of Chuck Schumer? He's the #1 guy for the crooked Democrats. He does stand like Chuck Schumer. He used to act like he's doing something, right? Or you know how that works. Behind Schumer. What's that?
He's been doing it for a long time.
Yeah, and he's United Airlines.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
OpenSecrets.org. If you want to know what companies have influence with which crooked politician, OpenSecrets.org. And I hope to bring up a different industry or a different cause every week and find out who the crooked, under the table 500 are getting money when they should be doing their job, but they're just collecting a check. America has been corrupt, and it's even more corrupt. You remember Steve?
Yes,
You got your shirts?
I got mine. Yes, I do. But yeah,
Only three. George, did you get yours? Steve's before your time. What was his last name? He lived by me.
What does this have to do with the environment?
what does this have to do?
What happened? Charlie,
You
What does
can't
this
hear
have
him
to do
because
with the environment?
he what?
What does this have to do with the environment?
We're talking about the environment or something. Anyway, so glad to see the young people involved in the environment. Sergio, your responses are a little long. Don't be afraid to say I don't effing know. I've learned that. You just say you don't know. Go find out for yourself. Go to Google. But you don't have to have a long run. You know your subject, but we got to get our handle on single-use plastics, mostly bottled water or bottled soft drinks, bottled anything that's thrown out the minute you stop drinking it. And that's your microplastics problem, I think. And it's a huge problem because if Europe hasn't even tackled that, it's a big problem because Europe tackles everything that's a problem.
Okay, who's our next rebutter?
Do you guys want to hear more? I can
No,
stand
who's
up
our
there.
next?
Huh?
Go ahead.
You rent a shirt from.
Go ahead.
I'm going to start a new club called the Fire the 500 Club. All the crooks in DC,
That's stupid.
including my representative, Fire the 500. You like it? It's got a good ring to it, like a Trump something.
Okay. All right. Jen, you're next. Go
I
ahead.
bequeath my time. How do they say that?
You reserve the balance of your time, which is out. Now go ahead.
Your shirts?
I got it, but it's dirty.
That's the one.
All right.
I just want to brag about something, and that is back at the beginning of time, I wrote a paper on Livingston Bog in Michigan, and the Livingston Bog is a sphagnum moss bog, and I went out there and analyzed the zooplankton that live in the bog, and it was a really, really interesting thing. I was at Pelston Biological Station, and we toured all of the little lakes and ponds around Pelston, and many of them were actual wetlands. So I know there was something else. Oh, Sergio is, his card said he is the climate representative at IEC.
Yeah.
And
Policy manager. My cards are outdated,
oh,
but my phone number and email are still
okay, because I was just gonna,
going away. So
all right, I get you. I just wanted to say something about climate because because I don't think anybody is mystified by the knowledge that I am against nuclear power, and nuclear power has had a really big effect on climate, and nuclear power takes so long from the time a project is conceived of until it is finished, takes a minimum of 20 years, and sometimes once the shovel is in the ground and you start to break ground for a nuclear power plant, that takes 20 years. And so the idea that nuclear is going to be able to mitigate climate change is nuts, because we don't have time. We don't have the time to plan and execute nuclear power as a mitigation for climate change. And another thing is people keep saying nuclear power is clean and green and reliable. Well, it's not clean, because starting from the very beginning of the fuel chain. When uranium is mined from the ground, it has a huge reputation among the indigenous of the United States for causing sickness and for polluting or for contaminating large areas of the United States. And when 3 Mile Island happened, it attracted a lot of attention. There was another accident at Church Rock that spilled mill tailings from uranium mining into the Puerco River. I think Puerco means swine or pig. Anyway, it spilled it into the Puerco River, and it was the biggest spill of radioactive contamination ever. And it happened around the same time as 3 Mile Island, and nobody paid any attention to it. So, and in addition to that, every nuclear power plant routinely emits contamination. And I use contamination as opposed to pollution, because contamination in my vocabulary doesn't mean everybody. Contamination is radioactive contamination, and pollution is chemical pollution. And chemical pollution is really, really awful, and so is radioactive contamination. But I'm going back to whether or not nuclear power is clean. There's the routine emissions, and then there's the waste. And we have about 100,000 tons of waste from spent fuel in the United States today. And this will last for 200,000 years. And there's nothing we can do to get rid of it for 200,000 years, because you can bury it as deep as you want, and we don't know how the earth is going to have upheavals or earthquakes, and we'll unbury it. But we do the best we can, I guess. And as far as being reliable, when there's a drought, you can't keep dumping radioactive contaminant, or you can't keep using the river to cool a radioactive plant, a nuclear reactor, because the rivers in Illinois became too warm, and there was not enough water in them to cool the plants, and the plants had to shut down along the Illinois River and down in LaSalle. And because France is the most nuclear nation in the world, the droughts and the heat waves in France have been devastating for the nuclear power plants, because they cannot function without cold water. So they're not reliable, they're not clean, and they're certainly not green, because they emit a lot of carbon dioxide from the mining, the transportation, the milling. All of these things involve machines that burn diesel or gas, and so if you and then building the nuclear power plant requires a lot of concrete, and concrete is a very CO2 polluting process. When Vogtle was opened in Georgia, there was enough concrete in that one nuclear power plant to build a sidewalk from Miami to Seattle. And I am quoting Mark Z. Jacobson, who has been doing this work for 31 years, and he is a professor at Stanford. And actually, he was our last expert at Night the Experts last month, and he talked about hydrogen. So I just wanted to I got all started on this because I thought Sergio's specialty was climate. So I'm kind of off, but anyway, once going, I had to go ahead and say it. Thank you.
All right, you're next. You're next, Ernie.
Didn't even get a chance to sit down and rest there. Yeah. Where's Sergio? Oh, there's Sergio. Okay, yeah. Very good presentation. Thank you for your presentation. And I hope you do a lot of these. And Yeah, I hope you do a lot of these, Sergio. I don't know if you do schools or other groups or whatever, but they need to hear uh, what you're saying. And the topic is current. It has been current for 30 or 40 or more years. We seem to get a little bit done from time to time, but not enough. And they keep talking about reducing the increase in the average temperature by 1.5 degrees Celsius or less. That's the goal. And a lot of people don't think we're going to increase the water level down in Florida. Well, not everywhere across the ocean, but places it'll increase the level of the water by a meter around the world. And there are an awful lot of places which will cease to exist, except as a big swimming pool, if that happens. And so the point, don't buy any land in Florida for the next few decades, because a lot of it's going to be underwater. And one of the big problems we have is Trump loves coal, Trump loves oil. And he said, we're the greatest nation in producing this, and this is wonderful. It's clean coal. He talks about clean coal. Well, there is no such thing as clean coal. Okay. And they had, if anybody's interested, I just happened to tune in last night on PBS. Greta Thunberg, does everybody remember Greta Thunberg, the Swedish girl who started all the schools protests and everything, and became famous? She went all over Europe. Then she went to New York, but she wouldn't take an airplane. She refused to take an airplane because of their extreme carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide that they give off. And so she took a boat in the summertime to New York, and then went around North America, especially Canada and the United States, and was on her way down to a climate conference, a world climate conference in Santiago, Chile, but they canceled it because of riots in Santiago, political problems. They moved it to Madrid. So now it's November, and she's got to get across the Atlantic. For most of us that will occasionally fly, that wouldn't be a problem. But she couldn't, and she managed to hitch a ride on a catamaran that went across the North Atlantic, or between the North and the South Atlantic, in November, at which time the ocean is not very friendly. But she made it, and she, incredible speeches she gives, just incredible for a very young girl, and got a lot of attention. Now she's 23, but when she started, she was 15. If any of you get PBS, I would check your directory, because they tend to repeat a lot of these good shows. So they may be repeating them over the weekend. They did them twice yesterday. They may be doing them again today, tomorrow, or early next week, something like that. One comment, though, I think.
Ernie, what was the name? Ernie, what was the name of the show?
What was the name of the show, Ernie?
It was a biography documentary on Greta Thunberg. Just look
What
for
channel?
her name.
What channel? What channel?
THUNBER.
What channel?
Channel
Yeah,
11.
what channel?
PBS.
Channel 11. Okay.
Okay. And yeah, I would suspect they're going to be on again, but I'm not positive. But you can check. Certainly, you can probably get all that stuff on YouTube if you want to. And they were very good. The documentaries were extremely well prepared. I think they were BBC that prepared the documentaries, and they showed some of the solutions they're working on, which are at this point just not practical. There's one place you could get 0.1% of the carbon dioxide that they produce each day. They can get it out, but 0.1%. It's many years before that'll be doing a lot of good. I think one thing as important as in the environment is we have to balance it. The RTA and the CTA are now on a program. I believe they want to be carbon neutral by, or not carbon neutral, but they want to be on completely off of fossil fuels by 2030, something like that, 2035. They're working on it. They're making progress. But the problem is, I went to a presentation on this, and the way they calculate things, they do not take other issues into account. Emissions, emissions, emissions. Anything they can do to reduce emissions, they will do. They will increase costs and do other things that may have a negative effect on service. If they spend too much money on that, they're going to have to cut back on certain lines, this kind of thing. And they are not interested in compromising. They are not interested in looking into other factors, just strictly emissions, emissions, emissions. I do not, we want to get rid of some of these bad emissions, but we can't stop all the rest of human activity to do that. And some of these agencies seem to take that attitude. But yeah, nonetheless, environment is still an important issue. We have to keep on top of it. Thank you again, Sergio.
Okay, any other rebutters tonight? All right, if not, Sergio, you get the last word.
No, I got a rebuttal.
All right, Charlie's got a rebuttal.
What
I'm
did you
sorry, hang
say?
on, Charlie.
I couldn't
Just hold
hear
on.
you. Jake has got something
All
to
right,
say.
Charlie, no, not Jake. Charlie, there's been some trouble with the computer volume on the thing here, so just bear with me while, go ahead and get started, Charlie.
Okay, I'd like to thank Sergio for a very nice presentation and a very detailed, readable, a very nice PowerPoint. It was very readable and understandable. I'd like to thank the IEC for the work they've done. I'll be eclectic, but I'll cover 3 basic topics. Number 1, I started out after college working. I moved to a rural area and was working at a dairy farm. And I've been following agriculture assiduously ever since. I noticed a few years ago, all the lefties, I think it was an outgrowth of organic food. They weren't satisfied, I guess, with buying things at a farmer's market at outrageous prices grown locally. So then they decided, oh, well, we're going to redo all of U.S. agriculture. Probably one of the most consistently profitable financial I'm not a capitalist, but U.S. agriculture has produced a profit, and Americans were paying less for food sustenance, like 15% of their household incomes for food. And I said, the lefties are going to redo agriculture. But they don't know, I got to wonder, how much of real agriculture do they know? And I see all kinds of, what can I say, pronouncements or activities to redo U.S. agriculture. And they, of course, covered it up saying, like Mike, oh, there's a big conspiracy. Monsanto is monopolistic, and ConAgra and things like this are evil multinational corporations controlling the world. And you can get into this topic. The only thing is, and there's another facet to this, is that you had small farmers, independent operators, and yes, big ag. And there's some reason to wonder why there's been consolidation of industries. And since 1950, one kind of wonders, is there really a place for the small independent farmer in the current industry? Very valid arguments that we've been trying to preserve the small independent farmer when we have not done that for other small businesses. If you operate a small business and you have difficulty succeeding, the U.S. government doesn't care. However, if it's a farm, they go out of their way to preclude you from going under. That's what I mean. It's an interesting topic. I don't really embrace, I don't want to be negative, but I don't embrace all the suggestions of the left for redoing agriculture. Uh, that's not gonna buy into that. Now, certain elements of the thing you're advocating, such as the wetlands, was part of the three-part program that I had for redoing the earth, was an extensive increase in wetlands across the entire nation. So I can applaud that. However, some of the things I don't fully comprehend. If there's any operating farmer who has no concept of silage or compost, he or she shouldn't be in the business. I mean, composting on farm operations dates back to the Middle Ages. They would actually cover compost piles with straw and keep it for 2 years. So I don't know what the farmer doesn't understand some of these things. I'm a little curious what kind of legislation, like that's just standard operations. Now, there's also been some arguments about factory farming, particularly it relates to the production of poultry and other products, meat processing. There's 80 meat processing facilities in the United States. You can go either way regarding that, but I'm gonna have to draw the line a little bit about. I was curious, asking myself, how many people IEC are farmers, that drafted this legislation. But anyhow, I would move a little cautiously about redoing a national industry that in fact has been successful consistently for decades in the United States in providing sustenance to the people of the nation. Yes, there have been trade-offs. Food is perhaps less nutritional, but we have enormous amounts of it, more than we would have otherwise. So that's the trade-offs you have to take right here. There are decisions that are made, but if this is an attempt by the left to redo the nationwide industry, I'm not certain if I'm going to really embrace that or go marching down the garden path. The last thing I'd like to talk about now, this thing about getting rid of all incumbents, and I've heard this before. Now, you get rid of all the incumbents, but stop a minute, and maybe a big light bulb will go off over your head, and the thought would go, well, who's going to take their place? Now, if you're just going to throw out seasoned legislators to replace them with just another bunch of people who could be just as corrupt, if not even more corrupt. Now, if you could come up with a method of seeing to it that corrupt people are not in office, then I'll listen. If it's just some conspiracy belly aching, you're wasting our time. So you get rid of all the current legislators. What process do you use to ensure that the new people coming in are better? If you cannot come up with a process, then I highly recommend you think about it and come back after you have developed one.
Okay,
But
Charlie,
throwing out
last
people for the
thought.
sake of throwing them out is just yada, yada, yada. All right, thanks again, Sergio. Please come again with an
Okay.
update.
All right, Jake, go ahead.
Okay.
Jake? Go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
Jake?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, yeah, they're all a bunch of crooks. That's why I decided to run for public office, so that I could become a crook just like the rest of them. Getting rid of all the incumbents is not the answer, because you could replace them with a bunch of people who are even more corrupt. The answer, I think, is campaign finance reform. One of the reasons the system is so corrupt is because there's too much money involved. Every election cycle, these guys have to go out and raise $1 gazillion in order to run a competitive campaign. Most of the money comes from corporate sources, and that's why we see the kind of corruption and voting patterns that we have. In England, if you declare yourself a candidate, they give you the money to run on. You're not allowed to spend any more than that. It's easier to do it in England. It's a smaller country, less expensive to campaign in. Our presidential campaigns are probably the most expensive in the world. That's all I'm going to say about that. In terms of, you didn't answer my question before. I was not asking about plastics. What I was asking about was recycling. This is an old concept. When I started out in the environmental movement, about 50 years ago, when I was in high school, one of the first things we did was set up a recycling program at the high school, which eventually led to a permanent recycling center that City of Evanston sponsored. There is recycling now, but we need a lot more of it, and it needs to be much more systematic. And the government, the state needs to get more involved in putting more resources into it. And I should say that private businesses could make money off of it, because it is an income generating process if you do it right. And it helps save resources. It prevents increase in the waste stream going into things like landfills and waterways and so forth. The other thing I wanted to say is the state needs to get more involved in energy conservation. There used to be a good energy conservation program both in Chicago and in Evanston. And I don't know, and then there were funding cuts, and so there were cuts made to it. If it were done right, it would pay for itself. And anytime you conserve energy, particularly electricity, if you conserve electricity, that means less electricity that has to be generated. It's better for the environment, and also better for the economy. You save money. You save electricity, you save resources, you save money. And I think the state needs to do a better job of it.
Okay, Jake, we got to let our final speaker go. All right, Sergio,
Okay.
if you're ready, go ahead and give your concluding remarks. Let's thank our speaker again one more time.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I want to thank you all for inviting me and giving me the opportunity and space to talk about IEC's work, specifically what I'm engaged on, as well as the ability to talk more largely about the importance of this policy making process and how we play one, small but significant role in the larger environmental movement. We're always looking for other opportunities to engage. Although a lot of our work centers around engaging and educating legislators and decision makers. I think connecting with folks like this, events, fairs, community-centered events, whatever it may be, have the opportunity to provide information about, again, what IEC is working on, whether it is our legislative priority list, which is available on our website, ilenviro.org. It has several of our various reports. We do a yearly legislative priority report, as well as a legislator scorecard, where we listed every legislator in the state of Illinois, and then given a series of bills that we were in support or opposed to, give them a grade A and F as to how they voted. And I think that's a really useful resource for a lot of folks, especially if they're not engaged in that way. It seems like there's a lot of folks that are engaged in that way, so it's maybe not as useful. But again, we're grateful for the opportunity to connect and talk with folks, especially folks as interested, eager, and passionate as you all. So we're looking forward to a future opportunity to provide updates as to all the bills that were highlighted today, or even, depending on how far into the future, bills that may be introduced that are just as impactful or relevant. So thank you again so much.
Okay. The College of Complexes is hereby adjourned. I wish everybody a really good week. And again, thank you for all for